All right. Hi, Jacob. How are you this evening?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good.
Good.
Thanks for agreeing to be part of my Berkeley certification process. I appreciate it. Just to let you know, I'm going to record our session. We'll be on for about 45 minutes, 45 minutes or so. And then I'll ask you for some feedback at the end and see if there's any feedback that you have for me or anything about the session you'd like to talk about. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, perfect. Um, so just to get started, sometimes it's good to set some ground rules. So is there anything that you would like to let me know ahead of time that is off limits or something you like, don't like, um, anything that you would not want us to venture into during the session or any ground rules that you have?
None on my end.
Okay, perfect. Um, and is it okay if I interrupt you occasionally? If we're just kind of in a flow, I might stop and just interject, ask a question, and just so make sure I'm understanding clearly. And so I might interrupt you from time to time. Is that okay?
Yeah, whatever you
Okay.
need to do.
All right, perfect. Or I might ask you a clarifying question or something like that. So is that okay?
Sure. Yeah,
All
sounds great.
right. Um, what would you like to talk to me about today? Do you have something in mind?
Well, I've been needing some coaching on a certain uh aspect of the industry that we work in. So the architectural industry, the design industry. So currently, we are having an issue at the principal level. So principals are usually well-established folks within within the firm, very foundational, but below like C-suite, executive level, but also above senior. So they are and above associate, senior, associate principal, and then principal per se. Um, Something that we're struggling with is more often than not, we are having bottlenecks and workflows that run through that principal level of these foundational people um, that are hard to part with per se, or are hard to reason with as well as because they're so foundational, they have a mindset that everything should run in their way, and it's halting progress for a lot of younger folks and executives as well at the firm. um, I was just looking to see if you had any insight on that, how to uh, coach as well as manage these foundational employees that are uh, needing to be reevaluated at this time. Um,
Okay.
how would you feel would be the best to appropriately assess and approach that as a executive level?
Perfect. And thank you for bringing that topic. Sounds like what I hear you saying is um, that you have these folks that are established folks in your organization, and you also have younger architecture and design folks that are coming up in the ranks, and you're running into some barriers with the more established leaders in the company. Okay, would that be fair to
Hmm.
summarize? Okay,
Sounds about
perfect.
right. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, in terms of setting a goal for our session, you mentioned that you would like some ideas and some ways of working through that. What would be ultimately the goal you'd like to get out of our time today?
It would be Uh, I think the most effective way to do it, I personally believe in the three strike system. So maybe a set of guidelines to take on, to approach these directors in an effective way before we, go into disciplinary action. We don't want to jump the gun with that. Um,
Right.
just some guidelines, some you know. maybe going on your coaching experience and your executive experience, how would you um, approach that in a professional way without stepping on too many toes?
Yeah. So just sharing back that with you, it sounds like you're looking for some ways to kind of sort through what the barriers are and maybe some ways to combat that or reflect back on that with those particular leaders. Would that be fair to say?
Hmm.
Okay, perfect. And so I think it would be good. I'm going to take a few notes as we talk just to make sure that I keep track of what we're chatting about, and I can reflect on that as we go. So if you see me
Sure.
taking notes, it's just to make sure that I'm remembering what you're sharing. So it would be great if you could say what's actually happening or a scenario, a specific scenario that's happened recently. If you could unpack that with me, and sounds like a really tough situation for your folks in that are coming through the ranks, the younger, as you shared, the younger folks in the firm. So if you could give me a specific situation that occurred, that might be helpful. This is a tough situation, so I want to make sure that we tackle it specifically.
Sure. So, a good example is, per our organization chart, senior level and associate level designers are supposed to take the lead on design processes, right? So, a lot of the designs that make it in front of clients are, made and allocated to senior level. They're people with, 10 to 15 years of experience working on, having a lot of design experience in the past. Um, well, we've had issues where people at the principal level or associate principal level want everything, um, would like to take on more of that design side whenever that is effectively, you know, they are above that, so they're more supposed to be on the quality control side. And then they let the people that they delegate, that the people that we hired to design in that sense, right? Um, and so the challenge there is, approval is one thing. You want to have the go ahead by everybody on your project team, right? And then um, but what it is ultimately turning into is the uh, the principal levels doing the majority of the designing, and then people at the senior level are waiting for approval. And the principal level team, right, like very top heavy, is very uh, over over inundated with tasks that they already need to do, so they don't have time to get to everybody, which is creating a bottleneck where people can't work until they receive approval from up here when the approval should really be coming from down here. So it's a really big systemic problem that's you know I wouldn't say it's making us miss deadlines, but it is making us work less effectively. Um, and I'm presuming it's just from, I used to design, I still want to design, that sort of thing. Um, how would you kind of approach those conversations, putting them more into a QA/QC, which in our industry means quality assurance, quality control, where they're more reviewers instead of designers. Um, and approaching the conversation like that says, okay, you are too senior to do this type of work and you
Mhm.
take too long doing it.
Right. And when you share that with me, I mean that's got to be that's got to be a challenge. And have you have how has that made you feel? I mean, how has that what's bubbled up for you as these situations come up with either yourself or your peers?
So, at the executive level, it's kind of created a lot of distrust with how we're running things. And then at the lower level, it's affected morale. People aren't feeling like they're able to get their opinions heard if, one person's kind of choke holding the majority of the design uh, throughout the office, right? Um, and so, both high level, people aren't able to see change because we ultimately want to keep these foundational employees, right? I see the good in everybody. I want to, fix fix the issue instead of, uh, just completely starting anew, right? And with that, young folks are energetic. They're right out of school. They want to design. They are excited. It really sucks the energy away if they can't do what they went to school for, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so um, that's kind of the where the issue lies, right? Is people are kind of not getting um, what they went to school to do, right? Um, because of a few heavy-handed individuals, heavy-hitting and heavy-handed individuals.
And I could see how that could affect the morale. And um, what I hear you saying to me is that um, not only does it affect you, but it affects those around you and affects, everybody just feels like they're bumping up against these barriers on a continuous basis. And would you say, Jacob, that this is every project, or would you say that this is more specific pieces and parts of these projects? How would you define kind of the scope of what you feel like you're bumping into?
It's majority office based, so we're having a lot of these issues with our we have 7 branches. So we're having a lot of issues with the Las Vegas office and the Phoenix office and the Tulsa office with these issues of an overbearing principal. Uh, yeah, it's kind of a case by case camp like case by case basis. Other offices are having different issues of their own, but this bottlenecking issue is starting to become a real issue in majority of the West Coast side of the firm. I'm not sure if there's any affiliation there, Western time zones and their uh, crazy bosses. That's not a professional way to put it, but
Right. Well, I think it's great that you have a sense of humor, even in the face of, what I hear you sharing is a lot of frustration, and it has to be tough to have the morale affected in that way. And so, tell me a little bit more about what you named as overbearing. Tell me a little more about that.
you cut out for a second there. What'd you say?
Oh, sorry about that. I was gonna ask you to share a little more of you named it overbearing, this sort of barrier. Can you tell me a little more about the naming of that, how you feel about that word overbearing?
Yeah, so it is overbearing. I think it's people at that level wanting to have a hand in all design decisions when they simply don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to make those every decision. They have to. Part of being at that level is you have a set of delegates, right? And people who are educated and well practiced in their field, and they're able to make those design decisions. And they're ultimately being stunted by, not being able to make those decisions. Um, because somebody else wants to have kind of a hand in everything. Um, and that's kind of where the overbearing comes is, you know, unwillingness to delegate and, you know, hear opinions from others. Um, and I think that comes from like a long-standing like confidence. They've worked in this industry for a long time. They think they know how everything works. and new fresh ideas are kind of not tried and true, a little edgier. Um, and that I can empathize, and that's kind of where their frustration comes from, right? I know what works. I've been doing this for, 40 years or 30, 40 years, and um, new ideas are scary, and you have to and unpracticed. So you have to, you know, I I think a successful quality of a leader is to be open and be willing to try new things, new practices, new things, and make them the tried and trues, and then that'll just make us better as a firm, in my opinion. Um, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, and I like that you're sharing that you have some empathy for the folks that are in those roles. I like that you're sharing that you even in the face of the challenges that your folks that are younger in the firm are having, like yourself, that you also have an understanding of where they're coming from. I think that says a lot about you, and it says a lot about the fact that you want to really try to come up with some solutions for what's going on there. So I think I have an understanding. And I think to summarize, it sounds like the situation at hand is very much you have these principals and they're experienced leaders. They've been doing this, like you said, 40 plus years, and there's new ideas bubbling through the new generation. They're edgy ideas, they're different ideas, and they might not be as open, like you said, that empathetic. You can be empathetic to the fact that they have these tried and true methods that they've worked with for a long time. So, can you give me an idea um, as I summarize that? Does that land you? You feel like I have a good understanding of what's going on there? Okay, perfect.
I
And
think you're taking good notes.
yeah, trying to take good notes and track with you and make sure that I'm understanding. So, I think I have an idea of what's happening there, and I appreciate you taking, being vulnerable and sharing because that's a tough situation that you find yourself in. And then as you look around the office and see others struggling, like you shared, struggling with the same type of thing, and then um, it's tough to be up against those barriers, and then that sort of sense of that what can be overbearing leadership. So I feel for you in this situation, and it's great that you're coming for solutions and ideas. I would like to ask you, um, just in your opinion, what would you see as a potential way forward or things you've tried already in the past, maybe some things that have been tried by you and your peers that maybe worked well, or ideas you have for options?
I think on my side, I think it starts with a conversation, and then um, just I think you know uh, having those conversations with the principal level people under me, per se. Um, they are like direct reports to uh, C-suite team members, right? So they do report to us, and one part of that is they are typically, we have marketing teams, right? But these people at this level are also our BD team, business development, and they are all the time, out trying to influence people, get us work, things like that, trying to impress new clients, old clients, nothing's better in our industry than a repeat client, right? Making people happy and doing those things, right?
Mm.
Um, so I guess a point of success would be more of that delegation. I think principals should uh, in their job description, it says that they should be more business development, quality control, more hands off with design. I mean, they can still, have a hand in things, but I think they're more effective whenever they are quality controlling, which, when they do that with their experience level, they are effectively mentoring younger folks at the same time. It's almost effortless. So, young people will see these things going on with the projects, and then as they correct them, they will learn, how to do it better, which is what the real value in that principal level. People who've done it for a really long time know how things go together, things like that. So I think that success would be more fitting them into, you know, a similar role in the industry, which would be, business development would be they're out of the office more, talking to clients, getting us work, and then you know, quality controlling, and then being more hands off, but also designing when they can. I think they still want to do that, like the young people do too. Um, but just delegating, being a little bit more hands off, I think would be the most successful way to approach that. And then, kind of starting with those conversations is um, how do you delegate, or who do you trust, who do you think can carry out your vision or their vision in your way most effectively, um, without being overbearing.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And there's a couple things that you mentioned that stand out to me. You mentioned natural mentorship that as the principals, um, as they um, do the more of the business development, the quality control, they become natural mentors. And how does it feel to you when someone shares that you are a mentor to them? How does that feel?
Uh, like myself being a mentor to them. Oh,
Right.
okay. Pretty valuable. I mean, uh, sprinkling my knowledge over the next generation's never a bad thing.
Right. So when people share with you that, like you shared with me, that the principals can naturally be mentors through the business development and through the quality control process, reflectively on your own work, when you share that, when someone says that you're a good mentor to them, it feels really, really good. So what might a conversation with a principal look like that you're experiencing maybe a barrier or bumping up against that? What might a conversation with a principal look like where you gave that gift to them of this is how what I see as a mentor? Because it feels good to
Yeah,
you. How would that
right.
conversation to them feel good to them?
Well, and that's kind of a tricky one. So I think more I think more so, we have people who are really good at the quality control, technical side of things, and then they're less effective communicators. And then, through the process of, review and quality assurance, you are, able to disperse your ideas, kind of in a um, introverted sense, right? So you can put it on paper, and then people will learn from that kind of indirectly. And there's a lot of value in that too. Some of the people, I mean, architects are weirdos, right? A lot of them are introverted. You don't uh a lot of same thing with architects, engineers, the whole industry, besides construction side, is very, heads down, very into their work. Um, and so what you get out of that is you get a lot of people who are really good at what they do, but they're not the best at teaching others what they do.
Mm.
So that's kind of an industry-wide problem is not so much problem. It's just something that like an effect of uh, just what we do. In school we were secluded for hours and hours working on our projects, things like that, and then at work it's very similar. We all go into our silos. So what you get out of that, unfortunately, is a lot of people who are good at making buildings go together and less effective at, working in a group, making teams, right? Um, and part of that, working in a group and making teams is a good chunk of what mentorship is, right?
Mhm.
Um, people learn from working on an effective team with effective leaders, um, with a lot of experience, right? And different experience levels. Like I've learned more from uh, I don't want to say like bad architects, but I've learned more from, the negative side of, you know, documenting our buildings and, our construction documentation than I learned just as much from the negative side as I have the positive side.
Mhm.
Um, so,
Yeah, and I don't think architects are weirdos. Just I don't know that many, but I
oh,
think
that's too kind. You're too kind.
very intelligent people. So. Yeah, so mentorship is important. It makes people feel good. Like you said, you shared with me that it makes people feel good to be mentors. There's ways to be mentors. It's a challenge in your industry, like you shared, because it's just by nature of the work, it's um, an introverted industry. And I think that's interesting in the scope of this conversation that you and I are having. And I would be curious to know, Jacob, if have you how did a conversation go when you tried to have a conversation about what you're facing, that what you're sharing with me today?
So um, it was ultimately met with approval, and then uh, um, ultimately met with approval, and then another project came along, and then it kind of went back to the same way it was before, right? Each project is case by case and so different, and I think it's like going back to the silos comment, a different project is a different silo, so you can um but what we've ultimately seen is the effects are, a little bit of change after the conversation, but then it ultimately reverts back um to the way it was when they're working with a different group of people. Which may come from, that's how I've worked for years, um, it may go back to that. So a lot of no negativity in it. It's just, sure. And then, afterwards you go back to your own ways with a different team that doesn't know how you work.
Right, right. So, yeah, you've had that conversation in the past. It was well received, you shared.
hmm
What were some of the things you hit on during that conversation that you felt like hit home with with the person you were chatting with the principal you were chatting with? What pieces and parts do you feel like were effective?
I feel like understanding that you know, uh seeing it as a solution. So if you are overly busy, like per se, right? That delegation is immediately relief for that, right?
Uh-huh.
So it was a really quick and easy way to take a lot off of their plates. And so that was hit with a lot of approval. I think where that goes back is the inability to let go. um, later on, kind of the reverting back to the old ways. Um, I think um, you know, a lot of the success in the conversation was we can take some off your plate and people are willing to do this work for you. It's just how much are you willing to give or how much are you willing to let go of was the main issue. So everybody wants to be less busy. Uh, but also wanting to have a hand in everything kind of, undoes that immediately.
Right. So the tendency to revert back to old practices. I do
Hmm.
like what you shared about your approach with the conversation was solution based. You came to this individual with a solution, and you shared that verbally in the conversation, and it was well received. Um, and before you had that conversation, what was your um what were your concerns? You share with me today that that you're wanting a path forward and some ideas. You did have a conversation, you brought solutions forward and it worked really well. What would you like to expand on there in terms of next steps? Or do you see a path forward that includes other other conversations that could be equally as successful?
I think the way forward would be like I mentioned, like getting that to stick,
Mhm.
a lot of the times it's uh like a conversation is like a slap on the wrist solution, right? And it's not really um affecting, after a little while, reverting back, it doesn't really affect change, right? And I think the ultimate goal would be um to have people um, effectively work more in their job description, right? What a principal is supposed to do. How can we get people to stick to that instead of trying to have their hands in so many pies, right?
And who is responsible for in your organization for the reflection of the principals on their job descriptions and responsibilities?
So we usually do bi-yearly reviews. Bi-yearly as in twice a year. I always get that confused. So we usually do twice a year reviews with their mentorship, and for the principals, that is typically the chief executive officer, um, chief operating officer, and the chief architectural officer. So, and they all sit on a board that effectively reviews them all together, right? Um, and so it would be for them in particular, it is that C-suite level. And then, associate principals, it's the principal level, and then, associate for senior, it's associate, and then, however far up you need to go, right? Um, so
So yeah, so you've got someone that has conversations with your principals on a regular basis about their their work product and what they do. What I hear you sharing.
mhm.
I also understand that the conversations you have had with those principals has been effective. There's been some challenge with keeping that consistency. Um, so knowing that, just peeling this back, that that there's conversations coming up for your principal team that are delivered by executive members, your CEO, et cetera. And then knowing that continued conversations that you might have have been effective in the past. What options do you feel like knowing that, the landscape of what's coming up and what you've tried? We also talked about how people like to be mentors. So you had a conversation, you brought solutions, which people enjoy solutions. And that was really, people got excited about that. you also shared that people like to be mentors, and this is a natural mentorship opportunity. So tell me a few options. If the world was your oyster at your firm, what would your options be for next steps with this? What's going on here?
Well, I think effectively, more check-ins would be ideal. The problem with that is those meetings get expensive. The higher level reviews, everybody's build a certain rate, what are we billing that to? It becomes a big cost to have all those heavy hitters in a room and, scheduling at the same time and, having all those people, uh, in the same room is a big challenge with that, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, ideally, more effective sit downs, into projects, lessons learned, reflections like that. Our projects last, a small architectural project can be like a 2-year endeavor, right? Some of the projects that we work on are longer, larger in scale and, have those longer timelines. So, a lessons learned meeting will happen maybe like every 5 years, 4 or 5 years for these larger scale projects, right? So, I feel like by the time 5 years pass, you're going to forget that conversation where I told you to delegate 4 years ago, right?
Right.
So, so more meetings, and then I think there's kind of like a duality dichotomy of there's people who whenever they get to that level, some people want to mentor and some people still want to do. And, just managing those personalities, I think, um, how it is more effective if we can get more mentorship side people, but not everybody's going to be like that. So I think reevaluating quality control processes would be a good goal. And then, getting more of those younger voices heard. I think part of the problem is, and I say younger like it's not senior level, but you know, senior level folks, having more of a hand in things. I think they're really missing out because of this issue. Um, and we want them to eventually take over these roles one day. So it's like, how can we set them up in a way that will, you know, uh make them more effective leaders and more effective mentors, right? Um, and so, maybe more delegation, and then maybe more because the deeper the web goes, the more your mentorship is able to um, you know the bottom line or the bottom level, the new hires are able to flourish, right? The more people that they're able to hear from, right?
Yeah, I love
Um,
that you're thinking about this. I love that you're thinking about um, multiple layers in the organization. I think that that shows that you have this empathy and this drive to see everyone um, succeed around you. Um, and this isn't, it's a challenge, but again, you have empathy for all levels in the organization. And I think that's great that you have that. And so you shared some big picture approaches. You shared more check-ins. You mentioned the length of projects, but you did mention, more check-ins. You also mentioned reflective sessions, lessons learned. But again, you said the projects sometimes are longer. Um, you mentioned younger voices being heard, and you mentioned reevaluating the processes for the folks at the principal level. So if you had to pick one thing, because there's some big picture things, but there's some things you could tease out that would maybe be a small step. So given everything that we've chatted about, what's one thing you feel like in your own way that you could approach an impact, start the impact. And in further sessions, we can chat about additional ways to tackle. But if you had to pick one thing, what would that be?
I think a professional management training seminar for people at the principal level would be really effective. Just telling them how to delegate, maybe we outsource it, but some kind of training, at the principal level, which is tough to pull off. It's a big expense, but I could see it being very effective for just reshaping how they kind of approach these projects. I think there are I don't think everybody is you know, a natural mentor, but some of that can be mentored into them, right? So I think like some sort of training that would be, something not that we provide, but maybe like a outing or something to teach them how to be mentors more effectively, I think would be um really effective, and it would be you know just a way to set like foundations for people to and it would make them better leaders too, right? So just this way just to set up the foundation for people to get excited about mentorship and learn to let go and delegate a little bit better, and learn to do all that. Pretty much you're still able to do the things that you want without micromanaging. And I think there's a course, or there's some kind of training program that we can look into that provides some of that mentorship for the mentors.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea a lot, Jacob. I really do. And I like, you know, you mentioned you kind of titled it as a professional management seminar and you went into things like delegation, mentorship, um, and making time for that, making time for that. How would you do you have a venue? What venue do you have that you could bring that up as a suggestion and to whom?
It would probably be to the advisory board. So we are our company is ESOP, which is employee oh man, I forgot it. It's
Yeah, where
a
employees own, yeah, they're
yeah,
part,
employee
yeah,
share of ownership plan or employee
right.
share of profit, one of those. But you know, with that, everything is delegated into boards, right? So you can bring it up to boards of executives or boards of principals. There's so many boards. So we could bring it up there and then suggest it and then see what the repercussions to that would be. Um, but I feel like the majority of people would be open to
Hmm.
some sort of something. I mean, it's like a retreat, or going back to school for a couple days. I would see that as fun on my end, right?
Right. And you mentioned other young voices. So you have some
Hmm.
allies. Um, you'd have some allies in the room, potentially with the other young voices that you mentioned. And so, um, how would you feel about, would you feel comfortable practicing with me, how you would throw that um, out in the advisory committee? What would you say to me if we were sitting in that advisory committee? Tell me what you would say. Just
Oh
throw your
gosh.
idea out. Just throw it out. Pretend that I'm the advisory team and you're throwing that out to the group.
Well, I would lean back in my big chair and say, uh, I think we as the leadership of this firm need an effective um, Gosh, put me on the spot.
I know.
I think we in leadership need a perspective change. I think we could have a lot of value in pursuing some sort of management seminar or some outing to learn more effective ways of mentorship and how to make the younger people better. Because currently, because of the way that the industry is, we don't have a lot of people from the 40-year-old to 55-year-old age range due to that recession that really hit the architecture industry hard. So we are now relying on those senior level staff in their mid 30s, early 40s to take on these tasks. So there's a big gap between there. And so we want to make sure that the people of the younger generation, the millennial era, are well set up to take on your roles one day because I hate to say it, and they will have to take over your roles one day. So we want to make sure we're set up for success.
Right. I like that. And so let's do that one more time. One
Oh
more,
no.
let's do one more practice. You feel comfortable with that?
I suppose.
All right, let's throw out one more shot to the room, the advisory group.
Okay. I think we as advisors should provide some sort of training to our principal level leadership to make them more effective leaders and mentors for our senior level staff. We are currently lacking in um, mentors, and I see training opportunities for us to get better as mentors to future mentors.
Yeah, so perfect. And so how's that feel to throw that out into the room?
Frightening.
Yes, I mean it can be difficult. I think you articulated that really well, Jacob. I think that you've taken a very broad issue that you mentioned is going to take some time to get there. You did tease out one first step, and always starting with something in a difficult situation like this is a great option and a
Mhm.
great solution. And you have your younger voices around you, around the table with you, so you can tease out you mentioned wanting those voices heard, so that gives you an opportunity to turn to others and for reinforcement. As you mentioned, you have those other young voices in the room. So
Mhm.
um, so how does this feel to have one step in the direction you want to head?
It feels better. I mean, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction.
Right, absolutely. Well, I think we have a step forward, a way forward, a path to the next level, and I think we can now talk about some feedback that you might have for me. This is a session that I'll be turning in to the faculty at my coaching program. So, what feedback do you have for me? Likes, dislikes, anything that you would share?
I think you were really effective at taking notes, reading back what I was saying in a more articulate way. I know I can kind of ramble. So it's kind of nice to hear my opinions back to me. I think that was very effective. And I know some of your training requires that, but I do think that is very effective for um, uh, it helps to hear what you're saying right a second time. I like to say things twice, but they don't make sense either time. So it's nice to hear it back uh, from you before continuing on. So that's really effective. And I really appreciate that about this coaching.
Well, Jacob, thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate it. Thank you for helping me with my certification. And I think this is going to go really well for you and give you that next step forward.
Sounds great.
All
Yeah, I'll
right.
start here.
All right. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.